and maybe it's not. What time is it? 2:00.
It's time, baby.
Don't judge me.
All right, everybody, welcome. We are kicking off another version of Moving the Rock, where we help sales leaders, CEOs and sales leaders think about how to drive growth momentum. And really, driving growth momentum in sales is about connecting, making connections. And Chris McAllister, my partner to my left, and I have a great connection with our special guest today, Ryan Magotta, brave little beast, CEO and founder, and branding guru extraordinaire. And we've invited Ryan. Go ahead, Ryan. Say hi, man. I'm
hey. That's you used bigger words than I heard. Wizard. Is that what?
Yes.
I said wizard. Yeah.
Grand wizard.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe not grand wizard. All right, let's keep going. So we have a great relationship with Ryan, and we love him because Ryan is one of the few branding experts who understands what is required to create customer connections and expand those connections and deepen those connections. And he can do it using all sorts of media and mediums. And so today we're going to be talking about how Ryan helps CEOs and sales leaders think about how to do all the things we've been talking about. Identify the right places to focus and communicate in a way that creates those kinds of deep connections. So thank you, Ryan, for making the time to be here today. Chris, I have to start with you because you're the one that introduced the two of us. How did you meet Ryan?
That's like a crazy story in itself, our past life. And thankfully, he knew somebody that was on a team that I led, and he was like, Ryan's the perfect guy we need. And I'm happy to go into more of the context of what that situation was, just for brevity's sake. So I'm not hiding anything. But anyway, he's like, you got to meet him. And I remember I was on vacation, actually, and came down to a Starbucks just further down the road, and we hung out. And it was just like, it was amazing. Just the context, what we had both been through, how much we aligned. And then it's one of those rare situations where 10 years later, to have him still be one of my best friends through multiple changes. He helped do the logo for what was before it was SiteShift. I didn't know what I was going to call it. I just had to find a quick name. So I called it Peak Performance. And I told everybody it's not Peak Performance. It's Peak Performance for now. I'll call it something later. But like, I just still remember like being at a Panera Bread and going to a Chase ATM and getting out cash to pay Ryan to do the logo. Do you remember that?
Yes.
That was like, it's like these days where you're bootstrapping and you're starting and you're building something. And then to have him exit at the same time as me and just the wilder circumstances around that. And this guy, and I could embarrass him, has supported and believed in me like no one else. And it has been amazing for me to come back to him as a customer, not because of his support, not because we're friends, but because he kills it. I mean, we got the best book we've ever put out, right? From design and layout. And I don't mean that negatively. It's just,
yeah. And now you can, and now you don't have to pay everybody in cash. You can actually cut a check. Cool, which I'm sure Ryan appreciates.
It was kind of like Dumb and Dumber situation where he handed me a stack of IOUs and he said, "This one's for a Lamborghini. Hold on to it for later."
That's awesome. I gave him 0.02% of a stock when we publicly list, if that ever happens.
God, that's awesome. Yeah. So Ryan, introduce us to yourself, man. Give us a sense of kind of your background and why you are so uniquely, qualified to help people with branding and think about how they can leverage their brand.
Yeah. So I have been branding companies in Columbus for over 10 years. I'm on my third, what I call evolution of a business. I was solo, and then I had a business partner, and then I hopped out to be solo again. So I've learned a ton over the years. I have built this thing from the ground up repeatedly because I ended up building a business a couple times that I wasn't too happy with. I would wake up in the morning and be like, man, this is not hitting the mark. And I really feel like now with with Brave Little Beast, I've hit that mark. I've built something that like I get up in the morning and I'm just super excited to work with the people that I work with, because I think I made that change of it's really easy to go after, or to follow the money and go after, okay, these really large clients who a lot of times hate their job, they hate their work, and they're not super passionate. And I've really found that my sweet spot is partnering with people who are super passionate about what they're doing, and I can amplify that passion. That's kind of where the difference is with Brave Little Beast. Is I realized, and that's like my first conversations with clients, I'm like, listen, the number one thing I want you to understand, I cannot be the most excited person about your business, but I can amplify that passion. If I'm the most excited person about your business, we're doomed to fail from the start, because I can't drag you along with me. So with Brave Little Beast, I've really found that sweet spot of, in my early years, I was doing a lot of the creative agency things of telling people who they needed to be instead of drawing out who they really are. And being able to clarify that and simplify that, and kind of becoming that mirror to them that they need in order to tell that story authentically. And I think that's the strength of Brave Little Beast right now, is really becoming that mirror so that people can see, oh, this is who I really am. And now I have a vocabulary to talk about it. Now I can really represent this story in the way that I need to. So it's a blast. I love it. I love working with companies of all sizes. And it's really fun. I do a lot of work with smaller businesses, startups, all that. And I do some work with some larger organizations, and really like, having the experience from the larger organizations and working with smaller businesses is huge, because I can kind of help them scale up their brands, knowing, hey, you're gonna meet these obstacles in the next several years. But also on the other side of it, meeting with the large organizations and going, hey, you forgot how to be scrappy, and you forgot how to embrace a personality, and you forgot all this because you're just trucking along, and you've been doing this for 30 plus years, whatever it is. So I think it kind of adds some energy to those clients who have been in the game for a long time. And it's like, it feels refreshing and energizing to them. I can bring that energy into that relationship, which is huge. So yeah, that's kind of my little soapbox, my little spiel.
And you do it so freaking fast. Like, that's like, I mean, I remember when you launched out to do Brave Little Beast, and you're like, here's the logo and the branding. And it was just like so on point. And I've seen you do that in so many projects.
Right. It's cool.
That's come out of necessity. Sometimes it's like, oh crap.
Well, it's sometimes we get our best work that way. And I think what's really interesting, having been in business now for 30 years, it's you can be an entrepreneur, you can head a team, and you can feel like, money can solve this, but money can't solve it if you can't find the right people to spend the money on, right? It's not about having the money to spend. And I think too often folks make investments in branding and other types of communication tools, feeling like it's a numbers game, or there's some kind of magic to just throwing cash at it, and missing the importance of finding just amazing people with amazing skill sets who can really take you to a place you never thought was possible, who can really, that word elevate's really key. That's something I've learned over many years of spending and wasting tens of thousands of dollars, probably more, on, in relationships that just never panned out on the communication side.
Yeah. When do you get most scared for a client, Ryan, when you're first meeting them and hearing from them, and maybe it's a consideration to not work with them? What's like a warning flag or a signal that you're like, oh man, not that they're going to be hard to work with, because I think you've got processes to filter that out. I mean, where you're concerned for them about their idea, or kind of what Jimmy's talking about there, they're thinking, I get a great brand and everything's going to be fine.
Yeah. Honestly, it comes back to the passion thing. Just really being able to connect with people to see, like, I think if you have even an okay idea, but you have enough passion to continue to push it and refine it, I think that those are the people that I'm looking to partner up with. I think the red flags to me are, I've solved everything I'm going to solve. I know exactly what this is. And then I start to like dig deeper into that. I'm like, okay, so how are you talking about it? What does your revenue look like? All those things like prove to me that this is really working. And they're like, I haven't sold anything in 6 months. And I'm like, okay, well, no, you haven't solved everything. That's where I think we need to dig deeper. So it's like, it's an openness to unpacking and to getting more clarity. Those are the things. If there's instantly a wall of like, I know everything, I'm like, I don't even know everything. But I think that the co-discovery, like being like, hey, let's partner up and figure this out together. Because I think me knowing what I know and you knowing your tribes and your product and your people, like we can figure this out together.
Got it.
That's awesome. Jimmy, at what level have you noticed in organizations when, because you know, and I know Ryan, you get obviously marketing, but you still lead also with sales for your organization. It's a both and thing. It's a handshake between them. Jimmy, at what level do you think organizationally, if there is a level, where marketing needs to be leading the dance more than sales?
Right. Well, you know, so I focus on sales nearly 100% of the time, but our practice has grown to focus on sales and customer facing teams. Why? Because, you know, salespeople, the biggest mistake that you can do is you can field a sales team without strong brand direction. Because if a sales team doesn't have it, or they don't like what you put out for them, they won't use it. They'll make that shit up themselves. So we make that shit up every time we talk to somebody new. It's like, well, whatever you want, I'll be it. Just, you know, let's do this deal. And you just destroy any kind of impact you have or are trying to make with your more general branding and marketing initiatives. So what we really want is we want to include sales in the process, because sales is belly to belly, or at least like directly involved in solving customer problems. When you have a marketing team, imagine a brand that they would buy, but that doesn't reflect the actual conversations that happen with customers. You have a disconnect and you create that problem.
Yeah. Yeah. You need that input. I think that really, honestly, the greatest success that I've had with brands is getting everybody in the room. So having sales and marketing and the C-level and all of them there to have a conversation and to rally them around a shared vocabulary. I think that's the hard part, is every single one of those teams talks about the same thing in a different way. And it turns out to be this thing where it's like, I don't understand. Well, you're using this word. What about this word? Is this authentic? So like getting them all to filter in to start using the same words and understand the story and the character and the values and everything that forms the foundation of a brand, having them share that the same way. And I think that with sales, the sales team is always nervous that they're going to feel scripted, and they're going to feel like, because sales has finesse, and the finesse is unique to every single person on that team. They have their own stories, they have their own experiences, they have their own, all of that stuff. And so like what I have to do is come in from a brand standpoint and be like, no, you still get to use all of that. That's the second and third conversation. The first conversation you have should be the same across the organization. Really talking about that why and explaining that magic to people. And then from there, you get the freedom to continue that process however you see fit, and use your own stories and use your own metaphors. And then I can see the tension in the room release a little bit, because it's like, oh, I could still be me. It's like, yeah, you could still be you. I just want to add that layer of clarity. So that first conversation is lasered in and people connect emotionally right off the bat.
And that's something that I think is a strong suit for you. You cut through the BS and get to the emotion. And I think that's so powerful. What's a brand right now that you're emotionally captured by? Anything new? Because Ryan always has like the insider scoop on a new cool thing, like crazy, like nobody I know. I'm just curious if there's one right now.
That's a good question. I'm trying to think
of good questions.
There's several. I mean, like, honestly, one of the brand presentations I give is comparing. This sounds really weird. Mattresses, and so like I kind of pitched the idea of Mattress Factory and Purple, and so like if we put those two side by side, Mattress Factory is super confusing. If you land on the site, they have like 50 different kinds of mattresses, which I didn't even know that there was. A ton of different brands, all of these different delivery options, whatever it might be. And then Purple's like, we do this one thing really well. There's this version of it. There's a hybrid version with springs, and there's just the original Purple. And then if I start to really dig in further, Purple aims to make you laugh. As soon as you land on the page, there's a funny video. It's awesome, really well thought out. There's nothing on the Mattress Factory page. So like this conversation reinforces like, hey, you got to make people feel something, whether that's laughing, crying, whatever that is, right off the bat, engage them. Don't confuse them. Simplify what's really complex into, hey, here's what I can help you do. It's two choices you have to make. We make returns really simple. There's a chat bubble at the bottom where you can talk to somebody. And as silly as it sounds, like now there's 50 bed in a box models out there. That was like a couple years ago, that was new, but like Purple's the one that I go back to of like, they're just really honed in at what they do. They know how to simplify the complex and make you feel something, which I think is really, really strong in a noisy market.
Right.
Mm.
Right. I love that.
Something.
I love that. You've hit on this idea of simplified, and from a sales perspective, human nature, right? I want to pick something that connects with my customer to make this conversation easier, to break the barrier, the discomfort of our first conversation, right? And so a lot of salespeople want to have, customer brands that the client will recognize, or a name for their company the client will recognize, or a product that the client understands the category, or something familiar, right? Mm-hmm. And oftentimes salespeople gravitate to this stuff, and it's worthless. It's meaningless. It creates a sense of comfort, but it's a false sense, because what they grab onto doesn't really communicate what they want to communicate. And there are just far too many big brands that everybody knows to sell for. So when we talk with companies that maybe aren't as recognizable, it's not about having a name they recognize. It's about having a brand message, a value proposition, like you say, the emotion, something meaningful in the way that we introduce ourselves that resonates. It's not the familiarity of the name, it's how you make the person feel. Can I translate this name you've never heard of into a message that you recognize emotionally, that grabs you, and that I can use as a salesperson to break down any barriers and then continue the conversation? So it's not about the name or how familiar that name is or how many people know it. It's about how whatever name you have makes someone feel in those 6 seconds or 60 seconds that you have to introduce it, whether it's face-to-face, whether it's on the phone, whether it's through the internet or wherever. What kind of connection does that brand elicit?
Yeah. I think the complexity piece that's the hardest piece I have to teach people. So when I go through our brand strategy process, one of our things we do is how do we simply talk about what we do? And convincing the really smart people who have come up with an amazing solution that they have to understand that they're going to be the ones that bear the complexity of the conversation. They're going to know the ins and outs and the process and all that, but they need to relay it in a very simple way is the hardest thing, because people are like, no, it makes me feel good and macho. And I'm going to beat on my chest because I'm super smart and I know all this stuff. And it's like, you can't throw that up on the people that you're selling to. You have to be able to simplify that complex and talk about it in a way that they can understand, because people don't want the stress of the complexity of what you're solving. That's not what they want. They want simplification. They want to be able to be like, you connected A and B. Great. I don't care about all this messy middle. That's for you to care about. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what I've noticed with people.
And a simplification without a pandering and a dumbing down. And that's the thing that, that I've seen in your work that I know Jimmy and I value. It's like, if you do the work correctly and you're taking what's complex and making it simple, it's actually not a reduction. It's an emergence to the other side. In philosophical language, they talk about this idea of, there's this naivete, it's a simplicity. Then you get to the complexity because you're thinking about it and you're wrestling with it. And then you get to the second naivete, which is the new simplicity on that side of complexity. And that's the part that is so difficult to get to. And I know you talked about your strategy. It's called B School for those that are listening. Your B School process, takes people through that. And if somebody hasn't thought about a lot of what they're doing, then they start to go through that process and they start to get overwhelmed and tired because it feels complex. Mm-hmm. But like, that's the point, not to retreat back to that simplicity, but to press on through to that other side. And I personally, and I'd be curious to hear what both of you think about this, I've found, it's like that doesn't pixelate. Even when you get to the other side of that simplicity, you can keep zeroing it in more. You can add new verticals, right? And Jimmy knows all about where I'm at right now and how my mind is like blown up over that idea. And I just need like a week's time to go execute like crazy. What do you do with somebody when they're in that place and they're on the other side of the simplicity, but they're seeing the different verticals that they can build? What's your advice to them or encouragement?
I think for a lot of people, especially the size businesses that I'm working with, it's about finding the quick wins and not getting too distracted. What I mean by that is, so I work with a company that produces labels. And so they print for wineries and breweries, and there's pill bottles, CBD, the markets that they work in are crazy. And so I think it's really hard because when we first started going through a process with them, it was like, well, I want to talk to all of these. I'm like, no. What is the biggest win that we can come back with? What labels is there? Very little competition. You can completely rock it out. Let's get some wins tallied up over here. Where can we really focus in on? And I think that really pans out because then you start to have some revenue going, and then you can kind of figure out the more complex verticals that you're trying to get into. That's usually how I try to process with people is like, don't get distracted by this thing. Let's focus it in. You've simplified your message and all that. Let's focus in on those areas where we know we can just completely crush it very quickly.
Got it. That's really interesting. You're making me realize that there's maybe another role for a branding guru inside an organization, or at least the brand conversation. A lot of times an organization will come to us and say, hey, we want to activate our sales team or grow our sales team or open a new market or capture more share in an existing market. And so we want to level up somehow how we go to market. And it may not be appropriate to rebrand the company, but it may be appropriate to think about how to extend the brand. If I'm following you, in this conversation, or refine the brand so that it works in a certain medium or through a certain channel. Is that also a possibility?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's very interesting. So there's like the internal branding that I've done with companies, larger companies, and the external. So whether it's going to market with a new product or we need to brand this internally as an initiative that's very important to us and get that rallying point for people. It's like to drive that. Cause I think that everybody looks at getting new people into the funnel, which is extremely important. We want to get the leads in and all that, but you also have a list of customers and people you're currently working with who may be underutilizing your services or not using everything. So it's like being able to rally that and focus that in is huge too. Those are sometimes the quickest wins, rather than getting a new customer, just being like, hey, we have 50 clients, 20 of which are not fully utilizing all of our services. How can we build an initiative around snagging that business?
Right.
That's easier. That's way easier than getting somebody new in the funnel sometimes.
Yeah, because those conversations they're happening already. The people who are having those conversations just aren't possibly using the right words or the best combination of words to really have the greatest impact on the folks they're talking to or the folks they're engaged. Makes a lot of sense.
If you could go back and tell yourself something when you were starting Brave Little Beast a few years ago, how many years now? 4 or 5? crazy.
It'll be 5 in March.
Dude, congrats, man. And again, just for people that may be just joining us, that's start number 3. You know, I can count on my hand at least 4 times, maybe 5, where I've had to start over. You know, the favorites on my phone, minus a few people, change. and that's crazy. And Ryan's been a part of those. Dude, I had a stage when I started this full time, I had 2 weeks operating expenses. And Ryan picked me up at my house and dropped me off in the short north. We'd go to the gym. I had a gym bag, had a work bag. I'd get dropped off on High Street and was doing meetings like I had a real thing going as it was building up. And then I'd Uber home. You know, it's crazy times. But all that to say, where was I headed with this? No. If you could go back and say something to yourself, knowing what you know about branding now, because no doubt you've grown a ton in the last 5 years, and it's not about regrets, because it all got you here, and that's a beautiful thing. But for maybe people listening that are learning, what would you say you really did right, and what, if anything, would you do a little different?
I think with Brave Little Beast, there's not anything that I would really do different, because I had already had that stop and start multiple times. So that being said, the first time I thought too small, and the second time I thought too big. So I think it was totally a matter of just like, it's staying in the present and not getting too far ahead of yourself, but also not regretting too much or thinking too, like, I literally had to build processes and stuff that were not suited for the clients, because all of my experience was church experience when I started my first business. So I had to learn to work with businesses. And then I learned a bunch of stuff about how agencies work. And then like I had these really super corporate-y processes and all that. So it's like, it's somewhere in the middle. The beauty is the tension of those two things. That's kind of,
I love that. Is that why your tagline for Brave Little Beast is Goldilocks for your dreams?
Yes, that's it.
That would be terrible.
Well, there's got to be a story behind the name Brave Little Beast.
Yeah. So, you know, when I started,
can we say that on there? How do we rate this on Apple Podcast? I'm kidding.
So, you know, with my first 2 tries at running a branding agency, I again was just thinking about things a different way. I think I had to go the path that I went. I think we probably all look back at the path that we took and we're like, yeah, I couldn't have gotten to this point and understand what I understand now if I hadn't gone through all that shit. Yep. And so really, when I started Brave Little Beast, I was going to start it as Ryan Magada LLC Design Company. And so I was just like wrestling with this, because I was like, I just wanted simplification, because I'm just like, I've done some cool branding company names and all that. I just want just like, this is just me. And so I was sitting on this brand for Brave Little Beast, and I had created it to do some like prints and pins and t-shirts and stuff like that. And actually in a conversation with Chris, he was like, you have this, like, you've already built this thing. Like, why? And I'm like, okay, like I can see how this would be kind of cool. And so like, really after making that decision and going with it, like I felt like I was the Brave Little Beast, because it was my 3rd try at this thing. I literally started from scratch with Brave Little Beast. I dropped a gig that I was making 6 figures, and I was like, you know, on top of the world kind of a thing. And then I went to nothing. I had no clients. And I had to really figure it out quick. And so I was like, I'm kind of the Brave Little Beast. And then over the years, I've really figured out that my clients are the Brave Little Beasts. So like, I feel like that's why our anthem is I lead brands into bravery. Because I think that there is so much confusion out there. You've got Gary Vee dropping F-bombs and telling you to work 16-hour days. And you got all this, like there's all these gurus telling you what you need to do, that people forget to trust their gut. That's as simple as it is. I think that like the answers that we need are inside. We just need that distillation process or that simplification that we've been talking about. And trusting your gut is the number one thing that I try to get brands to do. And so really, they're the Brave Little Beast. I add that courage, or I add that voice to go, hey, just shut everything else out. What should you be doing? You know what the answer is, and let's execute on that.
Right.
And I think that's where we kind of have our breakthroughs with clients and really do our best work, is when it's like, well, I really feel like I need to be doing this, but I'm all the way over here. And it's like, let's course correct. Let's make this awesome.
That's huge. Trust in the gut. Jimmy, you're going to say something?
Well, I mean, it's like all roads lead back to leadership. I mean, you've just described, another leadership in another way. I mean, you've got people out there following and creating the same shit over and over again and wondering why they're not getting anywhere. And what they really need is somebody to help them, develop and then carry that mantle of leadership into market. And that's the differentiator right there.
Yeah.
And it's the evolution of your own process and journey. Not that you can't get the advice or the help from others, but when they're pressuring you into the shoulds and the should nots, and that's when you're not answering that call. And I love the way that you said you got to distill down. The intuition could trick you because you've got bravado or you've got hype or you're hiding. But when it's distilled down and it's proving, or there's no proving or hiding, it's pure. That's how you've got something. And I think one of the things about life is you can only guide people into the way you live, and you've lived that. Like, Jimmy has a funny story. When we were together on a team, we were in line at a coffee shop. We were Mission Coffee in Short North. And he had this like wild look in his eye, and he looks at me and goes, I think I'm done. And like, I'm like, are you resigning? Like right now? And it was all in the process of, and what he didn't know was I was wrestling with that for myself. And on the inside, I was happy for him, but I was also like, dang it. Now he's got to go first and I got to wait a little bit.
Right.
But you've lived that truth of, I got to distill down what's happening here. And so that it's from a pure state, but then I got to go. When that action's there, I got to go. And so you live your own bravery. So you lead people into bravery. It's pretty cool.
I think you have a good point too about like, there's very smart people out there. And I think getting input is not a bad thing. I think Gary Vee's got some good stuff to say. I think that there's something there, but I think what happens is most leaders don't stop to digest and have their own thoughts on what they've heard. They just go on the cycle of, well, I heard this. Well, I heard this. Well, I heard this. And it's this thing. And it just messes up organizations because they can't just stop and be like, boy, that was good. Let me eat the meat, spit out the bones. And then what do I want to do with this new information that's been presented to me?
Right. Love that. So can we geek out a little bit on the sales side?
Do it.
Let's do it.
So, because I talk about this stuff, but I haven't really gotten someone's opinion from somebody with your experience, Ryan, on this. So we talk a lot about in our academy, the 4 metrics that matter most when building a pipeline, right? So we look at the number of new opportunities created from a sales perspective. We're looking at deal value, win rate, and sales cycle time, those 4 metrics. And they're the most important metrics, and together they dictate something we call pipeline flow or sales flow. So it turns that pipeline into something predictable. Mm-hmm. And a lot of sales folks and people who think about sales, who just look at numbers, think about brand as this conceptual thing that's a nice to have. And I kind of bring it down to when you think about who the sales team has to partner with, because sales is a team sport. Who does the sales team have to partner with to make those 4 metrics work, right? To fill the pipe, right, number of new opportunities, I need to work with a marketing team that can generate high quality leads. When I'm thinking about the deal value, I have to have a product service team that delivers enough value that I can sell that thing for more, right? So I can maximize deal value compared to my competition. And what's really interesting is when we think about the life cycle or the sales cycle, we think about branding. When you have a powerful brand, from my perspective, Ryan, you're selling without selling. If a brand is powerful, it makes a connection that makes the salesperson's job that much easier. And when you have a strong brand, you can actually shrink the length of the sales cycle. That period of time from when you have that qualified prospect to when you have that signed agreement.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that magic. It does shorten the sales cycle. When you can hone in on that, it creates smarter customers. If you have smarter customers, more connected customers, that sales cycle completely shrinks down, and your conversation starts at, let's talk about the details, not give me your best pitch. I think that's where like we can really win. So like one of the things that we work through with people in Beast School is this engagement model. So it's not a sales funnel, it's a set of nested circles. And the idea is that you need to create a plan that draws or leaves these breadcrumbs to get somebody from the outside circle to the inside circle. And so the different steps are you have to get somebody to know you, like you, trust you, then buy from you, and then refer you. And if you're creating that path, that flow, you should not have a problem with generating those leads, because you're not just leaving these weird little half parts of a story or a sentence of a story out there. They can read the whole story on their way into you.
Right.
And I think that
Do you call that the Audi to any process?
For those of you listening, Ryan's holding his head. It might be over. It might be over.
No. That's amazing. Yes.
You can use
why,
that.
This is why Ryan charges Chris double his normal rate. Whatever Chris has worked for Ryan, because it's just...
It's usually like some sort of hieroglyph drawn thing on like a napkin. And he's like, can you make this? And I'm like,
oh, yeah,
probably, but I need some context. What does it mean? But yeah, that outside to inside, like, it's like, the way I think about it, I want to push myself as hard as I can for the marketing to be as awesome as possible, for the sales to be as easy as possible. Like, right. You know, the story, the emotion, the context, and all three of us are in a place where, you know, we hunt for our food, so to speak, but we're also not pinging people blind on LinkedIn, you know, scattershotting. We're building something.
I think one of the,
go ahead, Ryan.
I was gonna say one of the big things too that I like about that concentric circle model is, so the know, like, trust, buy, the buy circle. That's usually where people stop delivering value. They give them the product or the service or whatever it is, and they're kind of like, peace out.
Right.
Magical brands continue to deliver value past the point of sale. I think that's the thing that is huge for brands. So it's like, what do your educational materials look like? What do your contracts look like? Have you put the attention to detail beyond that point where somebody slides a check across the table? If so, you have a lifelong client. You have somebody who trusts you, who wants to share everything they can about you with everybody that they know. And so in those different circles too, the different roles you were talking about fit into those different circles. It hops back and forth between who controls those different items. The marketing team is out controlling that social media, the outside circle, that no circle, running ads or doing whatever it is to get people into the start of that conversation. And then you have your salespeople who are in there trying to get people to know and like, and then build trust to then purchase. So it's like, it all has to work together. And having that polished brand that is clear and simple and beautiful, it builds trust quicker, and it definitely shortens that sales cycle.
Jimmy, would you say that most CEOs, as the company grows, it gets bigger, and their scope and scale for the organization, their time horizon gets longer, prefer the predictability of a marketing-led, supported by sales effort?
Ooh, that's interesting. That's a great question. Yeah, and I know you only ask great questions, right?
Thank you.
If I had a nickel, you know, it's all about the perspective that the CEO has, right? Now more than ever, CEOs are coming from sales. before maybe 10, 20 years ago when we were coming up, it was finance. And then it moved into, then a lot of CEOs came from marketing. The CMO title became very popular. Now the CRO title is becoming more popular. What I would say to you is that, so it really depends on the perspective of that CEO and what they think drives business in their industry. What I would say to you is that the difference between sales and marketing generally is one group, the sales group, really is built to be spontaneous, extemporaneous. They're designed to be responsive in the moment. And that's the skill set that's built for them. And it's really a skill set that's really well designed for that role. Marketing, they're meant to be strategic. They're meant to be the strategic voice, the strategic mind that the sales team can leverage. So when we help CEOs think about how to drive growth, we want them to think in a balanced way, right? You've got these people with clubs and these true beasts, right? With clubs and animal skin, they're going out into the marketplace, and oftentimes with all the sophistication of that, of a caveman or something, or a cave person going out and clubbing people, right? They need some sophistication, and you can't let them make it up themselves. You can't let them make it up as they go. A lot of what you're talking about, Ryan, is this idea of the reason the circle doesn't exist, or those concentric circles don't exist for a lot of people, is because they make it up as they go. And a lot of CEOs made it up as they went, as they built their companies. Once you get to a certain critical mass, which is like, as soon as you think about it, think about preparing your organization to be successful from a strategic perspective. Find your strategic place in the market. Find that strategic voice. Find someone like Ryan who can help you articulate in a way that communicates the passion and the value and the differentiation that you bring to market. And then give that beautiful gift to your salespeople so they can refine the way they go to market and have a bigger impact on the people they talk to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's in my mind, like, so how I usually define like sales and marketing too, is like your marketing should be handling your inbound, like your inbound sales. And then your sales team is doing all the outbound. So having those, you need both of those things. You need to be able to draw people in, but you also need to have kind of that sniper approach where you are really sharp and you're agile and you're going after these key targets. So I think that they both have to work together, and that support model that you just talked about is perfect. That's exactly what we love to partner with organizations to do.
Right. So it's not either or, like all things in life, it's both and, right? The answer really is, how do we work together?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, most organizations, when we deliver our new growth curve to organizations, we find that all the different organizations or parts of the organization that should be working together aren't. We have silos. And so unfortunately, the branding becomes a subphylum component of what marketing's job is. And it's in many organizations, it's not really identified as that real golden nugget, that jewel that can be shared across the enterprise and used to lift and to deliver to everyone's objectives.
Yeah.
Internal, outer, etc. All right, man.
Think about how that applies to my marriage. Just give me a minute.
Well, I'll tell you what. As soon as we stop here, we'll just carry over. Ryan, you got some time, right? We can help. We'll help.
Thank you.
I'm just sensitive to the time, guys. We've been having a great conversation. It's about time to wrap. I want to thank Ryan Magada for joining us. Brave little beast. We're going to have you back, my man, because this topic is too important just to have once on the show.
Would love that.
Yeah. Awesome. And thank you, Chris, for being with us. This is James. Thanks for joining Moving the Rock. We will see you again very soon. Take good care, everybody.